Bernie Sanders' new ad, America, has been met with a largely positive impression. People seem to like it. There's not a lot to it other than images of people from throughout America who are meeting up with Bernie Sanders, as you'll soon see, but not everybody is loving it. In particular, a couple of Hillary Clinton campaign surrogates are saying that it proves once and for all that black lives do not matter to Bernie Sanders. So we're going to play the ad in its entirety. You take a look and see if you agree with David Brock.
Let us be lovers, we'll marry our fortunes together. I've got some real estate here in my bag. Counting the cars on the New Jersey Turnpike, they've all come to look for America. All come to look for
I'm Bernie Sanders, and I approve this message.
Okay, so I have said many times I am a Bernie supporter, so I'm going to try to not be overly affected by my normal bias. We've just watched the ad. Watching the ad, do we come to the conclusion individually that this shows a false image of America and perhaps indicates that while he might be liberal and everything, he perhaps doesn't prioritize showing diversity in his ads?
Well, I think, if ever there was a white supremacist ad, I halfway expected to see Trump at the end and just be like, no, I mean, it's ridiculous.
With Bernie putting a brick on the wall?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's clear to me, I think. No, that's ridiculous. It's kind of, and particularly for Bernie Sanders. I think Bernie Sanders has a pretty extensive history of being in support of
he was involved in the civil rights movement.
Right, what was it? He was arrested in 1962 protesting segregation, like he did the March on Washington.
He didn't think they'd gone far enough?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
segregation?
Well, yes, basically. He wanted it a little bit worse, and he didn't get his way, so that's why he's, that's what happened to his hair.
That's true. You always see those pictures of the white water fountain, the black water fountain, but they're like right next to each other.
Yeah, I mean,
buffer.
What else do you want? I mean, what else do you want?
So you don't think that ad is what David Brooks? You don't agree with him?
No, he's being ridiculous, and I think it's obvious that What's amazing to me though is that he said this to the Associated Press. Like, this wasn't just sort of like an off-color comment to like a friend. Like, he literally said this to the Associated Press. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yes, of course. Isn't that the equivalent of saying, like, hey, Donald Trump's commercial doesn't have enough white people in it?
Exactly.
Maybe he doesn't support white people.
Yeah, clearly he hates white people.
I don't know. He should have more white people in
That's
his
always
ad.
the vibe I've gotten from Donald Trump.
How are you going to know how he's going to act?
Yeah.
If you don't have enough white people in your ad, Donald Trump. So
I think that was obviously, though, too, also intended to sort of, I don't want to say pander, but it was obviously turned toward a certain section of the population, probably a more Midwestern-y, farmy.
It looks like Iowa and New Hampshire,
and it's
basically.
like, it's that, and there's probably like 7 black people in Iowa. So, I mean, I think he got at least a few of them in that ad.
92% white, I think.
Yeah, and New Hampshire is pretty close to the same thing, right?
But perhaps a little bit higher. I don't want to actually read what David Brock said.
That's what I want to
He characterized the ad as a significant slight to the Democratic base, and he said, from this ad, it seems black lives don't matter much to Bernie Sanders. Now, a spokesman for Bernie Sanders' campaign responded by saying he doesn't need lectures on civil rights and racial issues from David Brock, the head of a Hillary Clinton super PAC. He's actually had multiple Hillary Clinton supporting super PACs. 25 years ago, it was Brock, a mudslinging right-wing extremist who tried to destroy Anita Hill, a distinguished African-American law professor. He's referring to Brock having to, in 2001, disavow a book he had written attacking the woman who accused Clarence Thomas of sexual harassment. He later was forced to apologize for his lies about her. Today, he is lying about Senator Sanders. And by the way, it's not just him. The Atlantic's David A. Graham said, it's hard not to notice how white the ad is. I counted perhaps half a dozen people of color in the spot. Now, look, I think the reason they're launching this attack has nothing to do with the possibility that David Brock watched the ad and thought there aren't enough black people in here. The reason they're doing it is because Hillary Clinton has been embraced far more than Bernie Sanders by especially the African-American community. Mm-hmm. She has a much higher percentage of the vote, and they want to use that. Now, while all of that is true, I mean, the ad was very white. It could be because they filmed in places that are 90% white.
Right.
I would say, personally, for me, I don't like when every politician has to put every type of... They make it so that it's perfectly distributed. You have a kid, you have an old person, you have somebody working in an office, you have somebody working in a construction site, you have somebody who's black, somebody who might be a lesbian. Like, you do all that artificial shit. They just used footage from when he was out there.
It would have been odd if there were, like, 70 black people in that ad. Like, that would have been strange to me.
Yeah,
like
it
that
would
would
have
have
stood
been
out.
like that would have been strange considering where it was and
Where
kind
it
of
was
what they were
filmed.
going. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that would have stood out, I think, more, and people would have been like, that's not even the demographic makeup. Like, you're clearly
Of the
pandering
place.
now. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
David Brock's saying that style is more important than substance.
He's basically saying that, yes.
So that's a
and
good-
it's so
and-
much
and-
more important that you are a racist if you don't acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, he's shown good judgment in the past.
Yes.
David Brock, you know, remember when he was prosecuting the Clintons? Remember when he was anti, when he wrote those stories that got Paula Davis sued?
I actually did not know that. I wasn't really
Oh yeah, so
following the news at that point.
well, yeah, he's that's his now. He was famous for being anti Clintons, right?
Well, apparently he can evolve.
And then he shifted. I think maybe it was Fox News came on the air and it made him shift or something. Maybe he got a good look at what he was doing and he stopped. And then I think in 2004 he founded that Media Matters, which is a great website.
Yeah.
So he does good work, but this is again shitty work. It's weird when you see lefties act like underhanded politicians. It's weird, right?
Well, I mean, when the primary starts to get competitive, people feel like they need to amplify the differences between the candidates. Like, I support Bernie Sanders, and I can point out a couple of ways in which I think Hillary Clinton would be a disaster, but I'm not one of the people who says she's definitely not a liberal. On many issues, she is significantly progressive, and she wouldn't be terrible overall. The one thing I do want to say is I think it's extremely important to reference the fact that for decades and decades, Bernie Sanders has seemed to, like, if you 40 years ago were involved in the civil rights movement, you probably cared at least a little bit about equality. But at the same time, he has been in New Hampshire for a very long time, and he hasn't been surrounded by that much racial diversity. And so when originally Black Lives Matter was sort of showing up at his rallies, he could have handled it better.
Right.
And I doubt every day one of the first things on his mind is racial equality. But at the same time, when Black Lives Matter put out their Campaign Zero list of reforms that they wanted, he was scored by them as having the best suite of policies. And at the end of the day, the policies and the impact that they'd have on communities should be what is most important. Not just the fact that historically your family has been well received by a particular racial
But I
group.
think also, too, I think, was it 2002, he had a 93% rating from the ACLU, 97% rating in 2006 from the NAACP. And it's like, also, I don't think any candidate handled Black Lives Matter well. Like,
Yeah, that's
I don't
true.
think any of them did. They were
Martin
all,
O'Malley didn't.
O'Malley didn't. They were all very awkward. And because it kind of came out of nowhere. So I don't think Bernie Sanders even necessarily handled that abnormally bad. I think they all
he sort of just stood to the side.
yeah, and just kind of like let them go ahead as opposed to like shutting them down. I don't think
That's
Hillary
true.
handled them well. She ended up meeting with them later.
Afterward, yeah.
But I mean, I think as they
Yeah.
go, I mean, I think he handled it probably just
Yeah.
as well as any of them.
And she barely even gave them a meeting. You could talk to me backstage standing up.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah,
That was
exactly.
Her meeting.
And it was
Yeah.
very awkward,
Yeah.
and it was very.
And
she
somehow-
almost seemed angry during the meeting, like that she had to stand there for
Yeah.
it. But
And
Yeah.
just it's like again, why can't we have honest attacks on the left
Yeah.
during the primaries? Can we just have honest attacks? And it seems like every time there's a bullshit, underhanded attack that smacks of right-wing politics, it's coming from the Hillary Clinton camp. It
And
came
it's weird
in
because she's
2007.
ahead.
Yeah, I know.
I don't
ahead,
understand.
but
Like
not
she's
ahead by enough.
Yeah, but it's like I would almost expect that from a number standpoint, from Sanders' campaign, like to do something to get attention, something to pull ahead. What is she, 9 points ahead in Iowa and 25 nationally?
Depending on which
like,
poll,
Maybe
yeah.
maybe you
yeah.
remember more than me, but in the 2007 campaign, I distinctly remember Keith Olbermann chastising, pleading, and screaming at the Hillary Clinton campaign to stop race baiting. Am I
God,
wrong about
yes.
There
that?
were
No,
some
you're
ads
absolutely right.
where they
You're
had
right.
darkened
Yeah.
the skin of Obama and
Yeah,
stuff like that. I mean,
you're
that's
absolutely
pretty
right.
typical.
And she was
but-
saying things like that, like about why she was staying in. She's like, well, Bobby Kennedy was assassinated in June. It was like, can
Yes.
you not invoke assassination?
Yes,
About,
she's like,
whoa.
That's exactly what she was
Yeah.
doing. Yeah, it was that kind
true,
of,
yeah.
hey, he's black, they're going to kill him, don't vote for him. That's
Yeah.
the kind of shit she was doing, which that should just disqualify her. And these
Absolutely.
And so, but why do you think so many African Americans are supporting her after she
think
pulled that
because
shit?
I support. It's weird. I like Bernie Sanders, his ideas, but I don't think he's as electable as she is. I think she is I think she's a juggernaut in terms of being electable. I think she's far more electable than Sanders, and so I'm supporting her for that reason. But to say like bad taste in your mouth, like I was repulsed by her from that entire period of campaigning. It was awful. But I think her husband, I think, resonated with the black community in the 90s, and I think that's a lot of it. What was it? One of the kids' mothers who was killed recently endorsed her. Trayvon Martin?
Actually, yes.
Was it Trayvon Martin's mother just endorsed her? And I think it's because, and when she had that meeting with the Black Lives Matter group, she did seem kind of angry, but she was just very blunt. She's like, I need you to give me legislation and ideas so I can go and present it to the people and get stuff done.
Which they did.
Yeah, exactly. And she's like, so I can go get stuff done. And she's very blunt about it. And I think whether it's a real passion of hers or not, I think she can have her feet held to the fire about doing it more. And I think she's just a more powerful, that Clinton name is a powerful brand.
It is, and it has been for a long time.
And that's kind of why I support her, not because I think, and no more so than I think necessarily Obama had any real major love for the LGBTQ community. I think he just realized that was a part of his voting bloc, and he went and got stuff done for them. I think with Clinton's the same way. Whether she's passionate about it or not, I think she'll be able to get a lot done for that group of people.
Well, I'm really glad, Jonathan, that you brought up the other responses to the Black Lives Matter sort of initial disruptions of the events, because I had forgotten O'Malley's notorious comment.
O'Malley was rough.
Exactly.
O'Malley was rough.
In the same, that was the worst, I think, out of the three. Good guy, but that was the worst. And it reminds me of, right now we're in the thick of another of these. I noticed this week, I tweeted about it. All of a sudden, all of these sites that normally I love and read all the time, like Vox, all of a sudden, one of their headlining stories is always a big takedown of Bernie Sanders, suspiciously. And they had this analysis of why isn't it that Bernie Sanders supports reparations? Why doesn't he do it? And they leave out the fact none of the other candidates
None of them,
do.
yeah.
So why is it Bernie? Look, okay, maybe Bernie Sanders is wrong on that, as wrong as everybody else. And for some reason, it's only a problem when it's Bernie Sanders.
It's similar to the LGBT thing back maybe 15, 20 years ago, where even Democrats were across the board were like, marriage should be between a man and a woman. It's like, they'll get there or whatever, but it's like they all had that in common. It's not like any of them were wildly progressive.
I can think of one Democrat who was right on that issue.
Oh, Bernie Sanders.
You could vote for him in Iowa if you want to.
Was he really?
Yeah, he was.
I remember a letter from a long time ago.
Really?
It might have
the
been
70s
civil
he was
unions,
pro-gay.
but it was in the 70s he wrote a letter talking about it.
Wow, interesting. And was he like an advocate for that, like publicly through like the 80s, 90s and stuff like that?
I don't know in terms of sponsoring legislation, but I know that was his position.
But that was
had
his
been
position.
stated.
Wow,
Well,
I didn't know that. I didn't know
You know,
that.
it was during the Don't Ask,
Maybe
Don't
somebody
Tell
can provide in a
period
comment.
too. He gave some very strong speeches and
Did he really? Wow.
yeah, so he's always been out in front on it. That's the whole thing. He's been on the right side of history, whereas when it comes to history, Hillary Clinton's been late.
The rest
to the right
of the
side
Democrats have generally
history.
had to evolve into. Yeah.